Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here. Just a couple of days before camp, Rams 2025 training camp, a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz about this team. And this might be my last opportunity prior to training camp to reset this roster and some of the decisions this front office and coaching staff are going to have to make. So that's what I'm going to do this episode. I'm going to walk through the entire roster and try to identify, what we should be paying attention to during training camp and the preseason. What are the battles that we should have an eye on? And I got to tell you, there's always going to be a surprise or two. So I'm probably going to get a lot of this wrong, or at least a few things wrong. But I think there's some things I feel really confident about, and I'm going to share that with you this episode. And there's a few things that I admittedly am very confused about, and I'm not quite sure how things are going to turn out. But let's walk through it. But first, it is episode 783, and I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 83. And, he was one of my favorite players when he was with the Rams, a guy that I think the Rams never got the full potential out of number 83 wide receiver Kevin Curtis. He was a really exciting player, 6 feet, 186 pounds, went to Snow College in Utah and then Utah State, Merlin Olsen's alma mater. As a junior, he led the nation in receptions, and the Rams in 2003 drafted him in the third round, 74th overall. And a little side note, Kevin Curtis was a pretty smart cookie. He scored 48 out of a possible 50 on that Wonderlic intelligence test. So he plays 4 years with the Rams, went on to the Eagles, Chiefs, and Dolphins after that. With the Rams, 136 catches, 1,714 yards, and 12 TDs. His best year, 2005, 801 yards and 6 TDs. First year with the Eagles, he eclipsed 1,000 yards. And in the 2004 playoffs, Curtis became the second player in NFL history to have back-to-back 100-yard receiving games in the playoffs. But while never having done that in his regular season career, he did that against the win over the Seahawks for the Rams and then the loss to the Falcons. And maybe that's evidence that the Rams never got the full potential out of Kevin Curtis. And in 2005, there was a game against the Texans. And I remember this one. I was at a sports bar, and the Rams were down 24-3 to the Texans. This is in November 2005. And then Rams roared back, tied it up, sent it into overtime, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick to Kevin Curtis, 56-yard touchdown pass, and the Rams won in overtime. And Curtis was just, when he joined the team, they still had Bruce and Holt, so he was kind of a third wheel there. And by the time he really got rolling, the offense, the quarterback situation had deteriorated a little bit, and the Rams were on the downward trajectory. But he was a really talented guy, and I feel like in the right situation, he could have been a premier wide receiver. Just never really worked out for him. But I mean, he was decent, had a good career, but I think it could have been much better. And not on him at all. I do not think. I think it was just the situations he found himself in. So let's get into this roster reset. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to walk through the guys that I think are pretty. I'm going to use the word lock, and I hesitate to do that because there's a lot of guys that are. I'm going to call them locks, but are they really? Yeah, I'm not so sure. But call it whatever you want. I have a bunch of guys that I think are going to be on this roster. And on offense, quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends displayed on the screen here for you. Those of you listening on the podcast, Matthew Stafford, Jimmy G, and then the 3 running backs, Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, and Jarquez Hunter. And then the 4 tight ends, Higbee, Parkinson, Allen, and Ferguson. And these 4 position groups, I think, are pretty well set. You don't see Stetson Bennett's name on here. You don't see Ronnie Rivers either. So when we get to the end here, we'll talk about how the Rams fill out these roster spots that remain open after I get through the guys that I'm assigning to the roster. And that's where we'll talk about guys like Ronnie Rivers and Stetson Bennett. But so there's 9 guys on offense so far: 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 4 tight ends. And for reference, the Rams did start last year with 3 running backs. Could they carry 4? Very possibly, but another position group's going to suffer. Let's move on to some more guys on offense. The wide receivers: Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington, and Konate Mumpfield. So we're up to, that's 5 wide receivers. So we're up to 14. Yes, missing from this list, 2 guys that we'll talk about here in a minute. And by the way, there's a handful of undrafted free agents that won't get mentioned here. And I don't mean to totally discount their chances. There is very possible one of these guys could surprise us and bump someone, or just actually squeeze another roster spot out of a position group. I don't see it happening with the wide receivers, though. But there are 2 guys that are obviously missing from this list. The Rams will carry at least 6 wide receivers. We'll talk about how they fill that position group out here at the end. Moving on to the offense, the offensive line. I have 7 offensive linemen listed here: DJ Humphries, Steve Avila, Coleman Shelton, Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein, Bo Limmer, and Warren McClendon. And so what to do with the Lyric Jackson? I left him off, and that would be a name, a player that would change this a little bit. Would they still keep Humphries around? Probably, but it would obviously affect the another roster spot, another offensive lineman. But these 7 guys, I feel pretty good about that. And do the Rams carry 8, 9, or 10 offensive linemen? I think 10 is more likely than 8, and 9 may end up being the number. And it could, a lot of that could revolve around Lyric Jackson and his availability. So we were up to 21 players, 14 plus the 7 offensive linemen, 21 players. Then we have the 3 special teamers, and I'm leaving out the returners here. Evans, Cardi, and Ward. We are up to 24. Nothing really to debate here. Pretty solid group. Now we get into the defense, and I have 5 defensive linemen: Kobe Turner, Poona Ford, Braden Fisk, Davis and Hamilton. Davis, a second-year player, Hamilton, the rookie. And then 4 outside linebackers: Jared Verse, Byron Young, Josiah Stewart, and Brennan Jackson. In earlier discussions, when I walked through my roster locks, I left Brennan Jackson off. I'm feeling better about him. I don't know why. I can't defend that. Maybe it's his golf game. Maybe pushed him over onto this initial 53-man roster. I'm kidding. I just feel like a second-year guy that really hasn't had a chance to show what he can do on the field. The Rams are going to keep him around, and he is the 4th outside linebacker. And there's going to be a 6th defensive lineman and potentially a 5th outside linebacker, almost for certain, actually. So we have 2 roster spots to fill out here at the end. But we're up to 33 players, 24 plus 9, 33 players. And now we're going to get into the linebackers and safeties. And the linebacker spates, Landman and Paul, I think, are sure things. And the safeties, Kinchins, Curl, and McCullough. I know Quentin Lake isn't listed here. He's on this 53, but I'm saving him for the next set here. So we're up to 39 players. 33 plus 6 equals 39. I think that safety group, the top 3, is pretty solid. I think we sometimes forget how well McCullough played last year. And then Spates, Landman, and Paul. And Paul could be a surprise impact player for this defense. So we're up to 39, and then we get into the cornerbacks, defensive backs. I copped out. I just called Quentin Lake a defensive back. Then you have Witherspoon, Williams, Durant, and Forbes. So we are up to 44 players, 39 plus 5, 44 players. And who are the remaining 9 players that are going to get us to 53? And this is the dilemma, this is the challenge, and this is, when I hear people arguing or debating on various social media who's going to make this roster, I think in most cases they haven't really done the math. Hey, this guy's making the roster and this guy's making the roster. Well, when you just throw names on a board and say they're on the roster, you have to do the math, and someone else is not going to make the roster when you make those calls. So you have to really round up all these potential these prospects and returning veterans and who it makes sense for the 53. So we're up to 44. Let's move on to who could potentially fill out spots on the offensive side of the ball. We got 9 spots left. And again, I'm leaving off some undrafted guys, and I don't mean to disparage them. One of them could very well surprise us, but top of the list here, quarterback Stetson Bennett. I don't think he makes this roster. And I have 3 running backs listed here, Ronnie Rivers, Jordan Waters, and Cody Schrader. And I'm not sure any of them do either. I love Ronnie Rivers, and I think Waters has a lot of potential. So one of them could potentially make it, especially if they offer some special teams value. And then that would be your 4th guy, your 4th running back. And then the 2 wide receivers, I talked about not discussing returners. Who are potential returners? Jordan Whittington, Xavier Smith, Britton Covey. And I originally had thought, and I discussed this with Ian. Ian feels like Covey's pretty much a lock, and I'm not calling that yet. I don't know what to do about that. I think in all likelihood he will be the guy, but I don't know if they have room for Covey and Smith. Do the math here. You start adding these guys up. You want 9 guys, 9 additional guys on this roster. Smith and Covey, carrying both of them is going to deplete another position group. It's as simple as that. And then the offensive line, I identified 7 guys already, and I think they carry at least 9, potentially 10, especially if Jackson, regardless of Jackson's situation, right? Because how reliable is he? What are the chances that he's on the 53, but then he falls off it for health reasons? Sorry to say. So you got a Lyric Jackson there, Justin Dedich, Willie Lampkin. Everybody's fallen in love with him. David Quisenberry was originally added as tackle depth. And with if Jackson can't go, Quisenberry and maybe KT Leviston are battling for a spot. And then there's Dylan McMahon, another interior offensive lineman. So it's I know Ram fans are falling in love with Willie Lampkin, and he's a guy that has flexibility, can play all 3 interior spots. I've even heard about talk of him playing fullback, which I think would work. I just don't think that's a Sean McVay thing, and I don't think it will be. The rolling ball of butcher knives didn't work out. Ben Skowronek back there didn't work out. I think he's abandoned that, and maybe they'll surprise me. We'll see Lampkin on the 53 as a fullback / a backup offensive lineman. I suppose it's possible, but who knows? I know they'll have some surprises this year. I'm not betting that's one of them, though. So, we got some, at least 2 of these 9 spots are going to be filled by offensive linemen, possibly 3. And the dilemma continues to grow. We'll move on to the defensive line. We have 5. We need another. And you got Deshaun Johnson coming back, Mr. Irrelevant, and Laurel Murchison, Bill Norton, and DeJoun Terry. And I'm going to talk about these 4 guys at the end here. One of these guys makes the roster. Again, I'll save that discussion for a moment. And then I think Nick Hampton and Keir Thomas and maybe some undrafted rookie we're unaware of is competing for a spot there. I think Hampton is probably the leader in the clubhouse, assuming he's fully recovered from that injury. And then there's Sean Dolek and Troy Reeder. I really think they are battling for a roster spot. My money's on Dolek if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, Dolek would be the fourth inside linebacker, mostly a special teamer though to begin with anyways. And then the defensive backs, again, how many do we carry? We've carried as many as 10. I identified 7 already, 3 safeties and 4 defensive backs, cornerbacks. And then we have Kendricks, Jolly, Woods, Wallace, AJ Green, Cam Lampkin, another Lampkin, and the 2 safeties, Tanner Ingle, and Nate Valcarcel. So that's going to be a battle among those guys. Woods and Wallace played well when they had their chances. Kendricks, he's in a battle for his football life here, I think, to stick with the Rams. And AJ Green has made some noise at OTAs, a bigger cornerback. I think he has a shot. So obviously some really tough decisions here. And I want to go back and look at this defensive back group one more time. I actually identified 5 cornerbacks, defensive backs: Lake, Witherspoon, Williams, Durant, and Forbes. So with those, plus with the 3 safeties we talked about, Kinchins, Curls, and McCullough. So correct what I said. We actually have 8 defensive backs already. We probably need to add, of this list here, potentially a safety and another defensive back or 2. The math gets really tough here. You see what I'm talking about? If you're talking about 9 guys that you're going to add from this group, let's cycle back through this on the YouTube channel, the visual here. If you're talking about a running back, probably not. Smith or Covey, there's 1. Offensive line, at least 2. So we're up to 3 of the 9. Defensive line, at least 1. That's 4. An outside linebacker, that's 5. An inside linebacker, that's 6. And then 3 defensive backs / safeties can make this roster, and that would about do it. And you would be done rounding out this 53-man roster. Some really good players are going to not make this roster, and just trying to bring this into focus for you. Now, I did want to talk about that camp battle along the defensive line. So we talked about the 5 guys that are going to be on this roster. And then we have Deshaun Johnson and Laurel Murchison, 2 guys that we're pretty familiar with. Deshaun Johnson, 6'3", 280, Mr. Irrelevant of the 2023 draft, has played in 21 games for the Rams, no starts. He has 3 sacks and 21 tackles in limited duty. Pro Football Focus grades, not bad, 65.7, slightly better against the run than the pass, which surprised me. And then Laurel Murchison, similar size, 6'2", 285. He was a 5th-round pick in 2020 by the Tennessee Titans. The Rams claimed him off waivers in 2022, December of 2022, and the Rams re-upped him in March of this year, another 1-year deal. And remember, last year he had 2 injuries that unfortunately derailed his season, did get some action late in the year. But 18 games with the Rams, 3 starts. He has 2 sacks, both in that shellacking of the Broncos in 2022. So I think the Rams have a comfort zone with Deshaun Johnson and Laurel Murchison, but I don't think what either of them really bring to the table is depth as far as run stopping potential on a rotational basis. So if they're happy with Poona Ford and Hamilton and Davis, Ty Hamilton and Tyler Davis, then maybe Deshaun Johnson and Murchison make this team as, an extra 5 technique, defensive end type player. But if they are not happy with their defensive rotation as far as run stopping potential, guys like Bill Norton and DeJoun Terry could bump Murchison and Johnson for a roster spot. My money is still on Johnson or Murchison. But Bill Norton, 6'6", 335, played 4 years at Georgia, 2 national championships there as part of the defensive line rotation, 1 year at Arizona, and then 1 year at Texas. And he's just a run stopper, pure and simple. Didn't amass a bunch of stats there, but he was known for his ability to get in the mix and blow up blockers, help out his linebackers and teammates. And he did have a knack for making big plays. He had a really big run stop tackle in the, I think it was the championship game against Clemson, Georgia Clemson, or maybe it was a semifinal game. Either way, though, he did make a name for himself for big plays and big games. And then there's Dejon Terry, another beast in the middle, 6'3", 321. He also has 6 years of college football under his belt. 2 years at Kansas, 2 years at Tennessee, 2 years at Oklahoma, and finished his college career with 91 tackles, 17 tackles for a loss, and 6.5 sacks. So he did pad his stats a little bit more than Norton. And he probably has the edge on Norton, although Norton, man, 335 pounds. That's a big body to move on 3rd and 2, right? So maybe he has a shot. But so that's another roster battle, a camp battle that we need to keep our eye on. Who is that 6th defensive lineman in the rotation? Again, I'm betting on Norton. I'm betting on Murchison and Deshaun Johnson. But if Norton or Terry can prove in camp, especially in these, practices with the Chargers and Cowboys, that they can really hold up at the NFL level against the run and turn into backup rotational pieces for Poona Ford and these other youngsters they have in the middle of this defense. Remember what happened last year, our inability to, keep these Eagle offensive linemen, keep them at the first level, allowing them to get to the second level and pick off our linebackers and safeties, allowing guys like Barkley just to bust loose for 60, 70 yards. Maybe Terry or Norton, can prove that they can help this Rams defense out in that regard. And if they can, they have a shot at making this roster at the expense of guys like Deshaun Johnson and Larrell Murchison. Again, my money's on Murchison, probably number 1, Johnson number 2, and then Terry and Norton. But hey, what do I know? Chris Shula's got a lot to figure out how he's going to rotate this defensive line. Keep these guys fresh. It's really important at the NFL level, especially when you're going up against these really good offensive lines, teams like the Lions and Eagles. You need more than 3 or 4 guys. Like felt like that's all we had last year that we could really count on to make an impact, to play at a high level. And going to change things up this year. Going to inject some youth to add to. We added Davis last year, and he played well when he had his opportunities. He takes another step forward this year in Hamilton. He's his calling card is good against the run, so we'll see. We gotta make sure this defensive line is up to the task on as far as run defense goes. And these are the 4 guys that would be trying to prove they can help in that regard. They can only one of them makes it. We went through the math here. Don't think there's room on this roster for two of these guys. One of them is going to be the 6th defensive lineman, in my opinion. That's it. We'll get to camp on the 22nd here, and then we're going to have a lot of stuff breaking, observations from camp, feedback on how these rookies are looking, and Ian and I will get back on that as soon as we can. We'll probably be back Wednesday night with our initial reactions to Rams training camp 2025. It's going to be fun times out here from Rams Up.